What is up, and welcome back to another episode of working on my overland Subaru Forester. Today we're doing something that I probably should have done a little while ago because it shouldn't have come to this, but my brakes have told me they're time for a replacement. And that is because I haven't been looking after them as much as I should have for the amount of abuse these kind of overland vehicles take. So today we're going to kind of walk you through some maintenance and some things you should check, and you should probably be doing a lot more often than I have been doing to make sure that your brakes are up to par with your Subaru Forester or any other overland vehicle, because we'll take a look at what happened. You might be already able to tell just by the amount of metal shavings that are just chilling on top of the wheel, but let's get this wheel off and see what's the issue. And then once we pull the caliper off, you might notice that this disc looks like it's has some grooves in here. It's almost like it's a final record. So we pull the brake pads off. So this brake pad doesn't look bad. It looks like, yeah, it's definitely time to change it, but I was well aware of that. I was going to be changing them, but this one tells a different story. That's just steel. There is no brake pad left. So my brake just vanished. I had, this brake was making a lot, or well, this lack of brake pad was making a lot of noise, and yeah, that's how I could tell something was wrong. So obviously that is not good. You want to change your brakes definitely before that happens. But what happened is you can see that one brake pad was still there and one just completely vanished. Well, these Subarus, I know particularly these older Subarus, they have what's called a floating caliper. So as it squeezes, it self-centers. And it kind of rests on these sliders here. They're just little kind of sliders with like a little rubber padding around it. And when I pulled the brake off, I noticed that thing was jammed all one way. So what happened is the outer brake pad on the floating caliper got stuck like much closer to the brake, and it just kept on wearing it out, and then eventually there was no brake pad left, and it just wore through the metal. So why this happened was because, well, the Subarus, as I said, floating calipers. If you're overlanding them, if you're off-roading them, you're going through some more difficult and probably not standard conditions. You're going through water, you're going through snow, especially with this car. I was going through a lot of snow, and well, it got stuck up, whether it was ice, whether it was rust. It just happened to stick the caliper in a position where it was just going to rub all the way through and eventually wear through my brake prematurely. I know it was time to do brakes, but I wasn't planning on doing them for a couple more weeks, but this just kind of accelerated the plan. So what I'm saying is, if you have a floating brake caliper like this, we're going to kind of go through what you should be doing, probably more than just changing your pads. We're going to be lubricating the sliders and everything so this doesn't happen again. And this is probably something you even want to do when you're not changing your pads, just as regular maintenance, maybe even every quarter or after the change of every season, because when this starts happening, you're going to be wearing through pads a lot quicker. So let's go ahead, get this rotor off and do a brake job on this Forester, and then we'll go ahead and put it back together.
First things first, you are going to want to remove the caliper, as I did, to inspect the pads. You can do this by simply undoing the two bolts at the back. Then you'll want to put the caliper in a safe place, out of the way. Next, we'll have to remove the caliper mounting bracket to remove the rotor. So to do this, simply remove the two additional bolts holding in the bracket. With that done, it's time to remove the rotor itself, but first, ensure that your handbrake is off. Sometimes you can pop the rotor off right away, and other times it takes a little more persuasion. If the hammer is still not working, grab a bolt and thread it into the rotor to push the rotor away. You may be able to use a bolt that just came off the car. Sometimes this takes a couple tries, but eventually you'll be able to get the rotor off. With the rotor off, now is a good time to grab a C-clamp and press the caliper back so you can get those new pads in. And now with the brakes disassembled, you can go ahead and clean it up and replace your brake shoes if you like.
And well, we're halfway there. We got the rotor off of the brakes, so we can take a look here. We can see that our new rotor looks a lot better. It has none of the scratches that our old rotor has. Like, these are some pretty insane grooves. But as I said, we were metal on metal, so it will only be a matter of time before it starts making grooves like that. So that's what happens when you wear your brakes out to literally the middle. So when we're installing them, as I said, we're going to be lubricating a few things, and I'll walk through those as I did taking them out. But to let you guys know what I'll be using to lubricate is we're just using some Permatex brake lubricant because it's Permatex, it's good stuff, and it's brake lubricant, so that's exactly what we're doing. Obviously, do not get these on the pads or the rotor because the brakes are friction. If you're reducing the friction, then you're not gonna have good brakes. But this is for lubricating the sliders, the brake pads, any of that stuff. Not the brake pads on the rotor, the brake pads on the caliper and stuff, making sure that everything moves smoothly. So let's go ahead, use a little bit of this, and install our rotor and pads on the rear end of the Forester.
The first thing we can do is going ahead and putting that new rotor back on. Next, we're going to go ahead and lubricate our caliper sliders, which, as you can see, wasn't working on this side. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go ahead and pull those pins off, clean off any old grease, and remove any excess in the mount. Then you're going to want to apply a thin layer of lubricant to the slider and put it back in the mount, ensuring the rubber boot is on the lip. You don't need much lubricant here. Once you have the sliders re-lubricated, you can go ahead and mount the bracket back up, doing the reverse of what we did. Although ensuring when you put the new pads back in that you lubricate any place where the pads contact the stainless steel sliders. And if you want, you can also put a little bit of lubricant on the back of the pads. And with that done, you can go ahead and slide the caliper over top your brand new pads and bolt everything back together.
And well, there you go, you have fresh brakes on your Subaru Forester. As you saw, the lubricant that we were putting was on the sliders and as well as anywhere the pads contacted, like the shims or the back of the calipers. That stuff will get washed off. That's why I'm making this video actually, is because you can put that stuff on and hope that it'll last the life of your brakes. Honestly, if you're doing overlanding, off-roading like I am, that will not last the life of your brakes. It is waterproof, it is temperature resistant, but the issue is when you're going through literal water and you're literally going through feet of snow, it is going to get washed off and rinsed off. So I'm going to be trying to do this pretty much every time I take my wheels off and every time I clean my coilovers, which will also be something I'll be doing today. But honestly, I'm not going to show you that. Just another reminder, make sure you're maintaining your car, make sure you're maintaining, if you have something like these off-road coilovers, make sure you're maintaining them so that you get the life of them. All I do is I really spray them down and then I hit them with a little scrub brush and make sure I got any dirt and debris off of it. I should be probably running coilover covers. I kind of forgot about them honestly, but maybe we'll put them on when we maybe clean these up for spring. Maybe I'll put them on for the next winter season. But now that we got one brake done, I'm going to go ahead and do the other rear one and then we'll jump along the front. And with the back done, it's time to move up front. Honestly, the front is kind of the same as the back end. It's kind of just rinse and repeat 2 more times. You obviously do have dual calipers, so you might have to squeeze them kind of one at a time, or hopefully squeeze them both at a time so you can bring them in. And then the disc is a little bit bigger and you don't have a handbrake, but other than that, it's honestly pretty much the same, making it a quick and easy job. So let's go ahead and get this one done and then we are all done.
As mentioned, the fronts are the same as the back, just with a lot bigger hardware, which sometimes makes it a bit harder to get at. I found that using a wrench is sometimes the only option when you can't get your ratchet in there. Other than that, it's the same process of taking off the calipers, the caliper mounts, and then the rotors. And then C-clamping the calipers, lubricating the sliders, and then putting it all back together.
And well, there we go. We have both the front and back done on both sides now. So we have finally did some well-needed maintenance on the Overland Forester. I hope this at least reminded you guys to go check your brakes, and if not, give your brakes a good service and a good grease, if not, to replace the rotors and pads, because you don't want to end up like me, completely grinding through a pad. As you guys noticed, the front was definitely had way more life on it. I think the previous owner didn't replace the back, they only replaced the front and just left them. So I have some spare pads, I guess, if I ever have a car that needs just front pads, because they still got like 50% life, but we might as well change everything as we're doing a service on it anyways. So I hope you guys enjoyed this, or I hope this helps some of you that were doing your own brake jobs. But that is going to be it for this episode. So hopefully next episode I see you on the trails. But until next time, peace out and stay humble.